been so important, Shabbat Shalom, to have a Shabbat of peace. So many of you have heard me speak in the past of one of the great challenges of my childhood, and that was when it was time to pick up teams, to choose teams. You know, when it was recess or it was camp or playing whatever sport it was, whether it was softball or kickball, because of my size and because of my general lack of athletic ability, some might even call it awkwardness, I was usually picked last. You too? I've spoken about that weird moment when there are just two of us left, the way we would look at each other, determine which one we thought was going to get picked first, me or the other guy, and then we'd look over at the captains and see how they were sizing us up. I would try and make myself look bigger. And if it's possible, I tried to make myself look faster. Of course, that wasn't possible. And I always ended up playing backup left field. And so, you know, I've spoken about that moment, but there are the rare and freak occurrences in which I was selected to be the captain. I don't know how it happened, but sometimes I was one of the two people that was forced into being the one who picked sides. Truth be told, that job interested me less than being the one who was picked last. From the very first pick, the lobbying would overload my senses. You could hear, pick me, pick me, pick me. And even though this was my chance to get back at all of those people who overlooked me or worse, said horrible things about me, I hated having to pick sides. I don't like to pick sides because I don't like to be the one who hurts other people's feelings, and I tried my best always in the course of my life to avoid conflict. Unfortunately, there comes a point in life and circumstances that occur that force each and every one of us to pick sides. And the choices we make and the factors we use to make those decisions are critically important. Today, and for the last 3 weeks, we've had to choose sides. For some, the choice has been easy, because for many in the world, there are only black and whites. For others, this has been an impossible period because of the vivid and dramatic human suffering we see in real time. This morning, the Torah reading opens with God telling Abraham to get up and go, and Abraham does. Then in going, God promises to Abraham that he will become a great nation and adds that there will be people who stand by your sides. Ve'avarecha mivarechecha u'minkalecha aur. God says, and to those who choose to stand beside the people of Israel, I will bless you. And to those who combat with Israel, with the people of Israel, with the descendants of Abraham, I will curse you. Just this past week, Reverend Gareth Evans and I stood outside the front of his church, a vigil organized by him for peace. At that gathering, he pointed out that he was prepared to share the burden of the Jewish people. He's willing to stand beside us in this great moment, this moment of existential threat to the Jewish people standing in our Holy Land. And he said that night, standing in that sacred place, on the space in front of his lawn of his church on Broadway in Irvington, New York, he declared unabashedly that he picked a side, that he blessed the Jewish people with peace, and so too I believe God will bless him and his community and his ministry, along with all who stood side by side with us this past Wednesday night in the darkness. We lit candles, and we dispelled that darkness with the fragile light. However, we know that there are people who have chosen poorly and have chosen instead to condemn the Jewish people and the state of Israel. And make no mistake about it, their anti-Zionism is just a disguise for anti-Semitism. They have found their voices projected on the walls of universities like George Washington University. From there to Columbia, to Stanford, to Yale and Harvard. They spoke from the House of Representatives even when they represent us in our own district. Jamal Bowman is bad for the Jewish people. And he deserves all the harsh criticism he receives. And we condemn those who stand silently as well. But we have known those people for a very long time. As Bruce Hoffman wrote in The Atlantic in an article entitled "Understanding Hamas's Genocidal Ideology," he spoke of the founding documents of Hamas, of their hatred. And he said, when they speak, believe them. That's what they want. There are, unfortunately, people who are just evil in this world. I've never wanted to believe that. As a Jew, I've always wanted to believe that there is goodness in every person, that there is kindness somewhere deep embedded within every individual. I've wanted to believe that sometimes people behave badly, but they aren't bad themselves. We've been shown otherwise in the last 3 weeks. In the next chapter of the Torah reading this morning, we have a story about Abraham and his nephew Lot. Lot was taken in by Abraham, maybe even raised by him, certainly given every opportunity to succeed by him. And the story continues. Abraham and Lot decide they can't live side by side any longer. The conflict between their two families and clans had grown too much, and they decided to part ways. And the text of the Torah teaches, Avram yashav ba'aretz Canaan, v'Lot yashav ba'arei hakikar v'yoel v'yetahel el Sodom. Abraham remained in the land of Canaan, the land of Israel, and Lot settled in the cities of the plain near Sodom. You've heard of Sodom. You've heard of Sodom and Gomorrah. And it says, Ve'anshei Sodom ra'im v'chata'im l'Adonai me'od, that the inhabitants of Sodom were evil. They were wicked sinners against God. It's not that they behaved wickedly, it's that they were in fact evil. So I say it again. I never wanted to believe that there were truly evil people in the world, but there are. We often say to our children when they get into a conflict with a friend of theirs, it's not that they're bad, it's just that they did a bad thing. I wish that were so true. And then there's something bizarre that happens. Even with that description of the people of Sodom, Lot decides to stay there. He could have gone anywhere else. He had received extraordinary wealth in living with Abraham. But Lot decides to throw in his lot with the wicked. He had every opportunity to move on. He could have at any moment decided to distance himself from that abhorrent people, but he doesn't. And then when we skip to the end of the story with Lot and the people of Sodom, we see that he had been taken hostage by them and then had to be rescued by Abraham. We should have seen where it was going. Lot should have seen where it was going. But then it's on Abraham to save him. The parallels between that story and what goes on today don't need to be spelled out. The warnings came and the wickedness remained. There is a well-organized, well-funded, and fully stocked army of terrorists. Terrorists who steal oil from their own people in order to fuel their war machine. There are people who misappropriate water pipes so that they can turn them into missiles. They take food out of their own children's mouths, gives humanitarian aid and reward of $10,000 to every terrorist who takes captive an Israeli. And we know who they are. They are Hamas. The world knows who they are. They are evil. And yet, United Nations Security Council resolution after resolution puts forth this equilibrium. You know, the opening words of this morning's Parsha are incredibly powerful in light of what's going on. When God says to Abraham, "Vayomer Adonai el Avraham, Lech lecha me'artzecha mi'moladecha mi'beit avicha la'aretz asher ni'arecha." When God says to Abraham, "Go forth from your native land, from your father's house, to a land that I show you," God is saying to Abraham, you have agency in your life. You can do what you want. You can live where you want. You can go where you want. No one can hold you against your will and keep you in one place. And Abraham does. At times it works out well for him, and at other times it's not so great. In some places he finds extraordinary wealth, and in other places he finds drought and famine. But when that happens, when life is difficult for Abraham, he does what he can to survive. Goes down to Egypt and gets some food, only to return. The famine did not bring down Abraham, even if it was severe. Even if the challenge was great, it did not bring down Abraham. When things go bad where he was, he found a way to solve the problem. You know, it's interesting. He went down to Egypt to get some food. I wonder about Egypt. I wonder why Egypt at this time has closed its border. Why it hasn't allowed the people from Gaza to go into their land. Or why, as we have seen Jordan over the last few days, call for a ceasefire, which means leave the hostages there, which means let Hamas have its way. Why Jordan is calling for that ceasefire and not opening its borders. But know this, 20% of Israel's population are full-fledged Arabs. Some are Christian, some are Muslims. They are doctors, they are lawyers, they even serve in Knesset. They attend Israeli universities. They're full-fledged citizens of Israel, regardless of where they came from. The roughly 2 million people are distinct from the Palestinians living in Yehuda v'Shomron, in Judea and Samaria. Some call that the West Bank. Those people have chosen to throw their lot in with the Jewish people, and they have a higher standard of living than most Arabs in the entire Arab world. God blesses those who bless the Jewish people and curse those who curse the Jewish people. Lot could have moved from Sodom. He didn't have to settle there. 10 days into the war, a rocket landed in the parking lot of Al-Hachili Arab Hospital in Gaza City. It was later discovered that with high certainty, it was a rocket that malfunctioned from a group called the Islamic Jihad extremist terrorists. On October 18th, the day after that rocket fell, President Biden remarked to Netanyahu as they stood side by side in Israel, "It appears as though it was done by the other team to you." We're blessed as Jews living in America to enjoy extraordinary freedom, and we are blessed as Jews that America has our back, and that choosing that lifestyle means that America and Israel serve on the same team. We're lucky that so many world leaders have chosen to be on our team. And we have friends locally, along with the extraordinary work that Gareth Evans is doing to support us. I got this amazing letter of support from the priest at St. Pius. And then, even more amazing, from the 5th and 6th grades of Immaculate Conception in Irvington, they sent us cards wishing us well-being, thanking us for our leadership in the community, and praying alongside us for the people of Israel. The crisis is real. It's in Israel. People are suffering on both sides, no doubt. The images are horrific. The devastation is nearly inconceivable. My heart is breaking as I worry about all those in Tzahal who now embark on one of the most difficult missions of their lives. I pray alongside them, my daughter who serves. Look, Israel has made peace with Jordan. Israel has made peace with Egypt. Israel has made peace with the United Arab Emirates, with Bahrain and Morocco. And it would have made peace with Saudi Arabia had not Hamas committed what is now being called the Shmini Atzeret massacre. And they did so to stop them. As Lord David Wolfson of the British Parliament concluded his remarks this week, I conclude mine. Taking from the words of Jeremiah, as he watches Rachel weeping as the Jewish people are escorted, are held captive and brought out of Israel. She says, Ko amar Adonai kol b'rama nishma nehi bechi trumatim. Rachel mibaka al b'neha me'amal linachem et baneha ki einenu. She said, the cry is heard at Ramah, wailing, bitter weeping as the Jewish people are being led captive to exile, and she refuses to be comforted. But we as Jews don't stop there. That's not the end of the story for us as the Jewish people. Ko amar Adonai min'i kolech mi bechi v'einayich mi dama ki yesh sechar lepulatech. Ne'um Adonai v'shavu banim le'artzam. God says to the Jewish people, cry. There is much to weep about now. But there will be reward for your labor. V'yesh tikva le'achrateach. Ne'um Adonai v'shavu banim ligvulam. We pray. Because we know there is tikva, there is hope, and God declares, v'shavu banim ligvulam, the hostages will be returned. Peace is possible. And I pray that once Hamas is eradicated, the evil of these inhumane terrorists are gone. I pray that there will be peace. Not just a sustainable peace in the near, but a lasting peace for all time. Shabbat Shalom. We continue with Musaf. It's introduced by the Chatzi Kaddish on page 184.